Hello, Mr. Robert.
Hello,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, yes.
I am very, very sorry to make you do this again. I had a technical problem with my laptop last time, and the record was gone. And I have to put this interview in my research. So I'm really sorry again, and I really appreciate your understanding and acceptance to do this interview again.
Sure, not a problem.
Thank you very much. Can we start? I don't want to waste your time anymore. Can we start immediately?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. I'm doing a research, as you know, about the role of digital sculpture in the contemporary art formation. And through the research process, it turns out that there's a whole community there, like Robert Smith, Bruce Paisley, of course, Dan Collins, John Ishwood. I want to know what made you enter the world of the digital sculpture?
Well, all the people that you've named are people that I've known for a long time. In fact, I knew them even decades before computer, especially Bruce Beasley, I knew since the 70s. Because most of us were metal casters to start off with.
Okay.
And metal casting is a sculpture process that requires lots of teamwork. It's a lot of technology. Some of that technology is based on 7,000-year-old technology, but we were also using space age materials and new techniques, processes. So we were constantly involved in seeking new technologies and working with old technologies. So the computer was a natural for us to gravitate to when it became available.
Okay. What did this technology add to your experience as an artist?
Well, prior to designing with the computer, I was designing in very traditional ways, starting with drawings, making models, maquettes in plaster, wax, clay. And, it's a very tried and true process, but it also is very time consuming and it is slow comparatively. I felt that when I first started working virtually, that I had moved into a 3D rocket, and that I was flying a jet plane compared to using a little hand scooter on the ground to design. So it sped up design processes, but it also sped up how to get to production and to keep the production closer to the original ideas, while at the same time always adding so much new possibilities so quickly. And so I had to train myself to work faster and faster to keep up. And it moved the ideas along exponentially faster than traditional processes.
What are the obstacles that you face while you're using this technology?
Well, the main obstacle, and it's not just with this technology, but I would say with any process of designing and with the idea of building something large, is cost factors are always present.
Okay.
So in some cases, the computer has driven certain kinds of costs down, while at the same time, if we wanted to keep up with newer techniques that were coming on board, it often required that we have access to technology that hasn't reached that low cost threshold yet, because it's still under development. But we were fortunate to make friends with a lot of companies that were producing software and new technologies. And we were bringing something new to the table because we had creative ideas that didn't follow simple industrial problems. And therefore, we were rather anticipating future engineering problems. And so it was useful for them. It was also very useful for us to have access. But that's, that is a hurdle of, making friends with people that have companies, lots of money and access to lots of technology that others do not.
Okay, that's a good point. And another question came to my mind after the problem that I faced the other day, the technical problem, that can we trust technology?
Okay, I'm trying to understand the question. Can we trust technology? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, after the problem that I had yesterday, like the technical problem. The question came to my mind, and it appears to be a very important questions, and especially in my country. There's a lot of electricity broken down. In some cases, we can't trust technology.
Yeah, but the reality is that technology isn't really the problem. We're the problem. The lack of electricity in your country isn't a technical problem. It's a human problem.
Okay.
Say that my best story to kind of explain how I think that technology actually improves everything, even the things we take for granted. They're developing all these autonomous cars now. And the promise is that we're going to have cars that will drive themselves. They already exist, but that eventually every car we own will be a self-driving car.
Okay.
I'm people who's looking forward to that. I've always enjoyed driving, but I also enjoy drinking.
Okay.
It's not a good idea to drink and drive. But I still have to get places. But I would have a designated driver built in no matter where I went, right? I just simply crawl in the back, fall asleep, and I wake up and I'm home.
Okay.
That's a good thing, but I'm going to take it further than that because a lot of people, they make a big issue that one of these autonomous cars did in fact kill somebody.
Okay.
It hit a pedestrian. As it turns out, there was something in the system that was missing. Well, they were able to rectify that. And now you don't have autonomous cars hitting people for that reason anymore. Maybe there will be other problems that will come up. But let's put it this way. If a human being is driving a car and they hit somebody, a pedestrian, or they hit another car, can we fix that?
I don't think so.
No, we cannot fix that. Not only will that person still be capable of making the same mistake, but millions and billions of other drivers can make the same mistake. But an autonomous car makes the problem. We can program that problem out, and there's always going to be a tiny number of accidents and casualties.
Okay.
Autonomous driving than there is from the current paradigm of human drivers who are too fallible.
Okay.
So I actually trust technology more than I trust human beings.
Okay, that's a good thinking. Which take us to another point after these questions. Technology make it safe, make it easy, make it easier to make art. Everybody now can make art. Just get the software, and you have the all tools and digitizers, maybe tab, and you can make art. the main purpose of my research that to understand what is art and what is not. You know, I can you know, I can't put a Hulk printed by a 3D machine in next to Giacometti artwork in the same room. So when I look to your artwork and Bruce Beasley, I see there's you are influenced.
But we do, yes, yes. We
I
in
see
fact,
you are influenced by Henry Moore in a view of your artwork, and Beasley.
Jan R.
You can see
Brancusi,
Eduardo
all of them,
Chileda. You
all
can
of them.
see him in Beasley's art. This is I have to know what is art, and what is not. So the machine make it too easy. How can you the role of the artist in this process from
Yes.
your thinking?
Well, again, we have historical precedents that we can look at.
Okay.
Let's say before the invention of photography. And when I say the invention of photography, the reality is we've had cameras for several hundred years because we had lenses, we had camera obscuras, and artists learned to use them.
Okay.
And that's why we have so many famous paintings that have lens effects right in the paintings, right?
Okay.
It wasn't until the early part of the 19th century that they came up with the real invention, which is chemical paper or a chemical plate that could capture the light from those lenses.
Okay.
So we had cameras, but we didn't have film.
Okay.
So once we had film, at first photography was very expensive and only scientists had access to it. And then other people began to have, and we start seeing average people eventually use it. In fact, by the 19th century, by the beginning of the 20th century,
Okay.
which was less than 100 years,
Okay.
they were already making little box cameras for everybody.
Okay.
Throughout the entire 20th century, your grandmother, everybody's untrained artist friend had a camera and they were taking pictures of everything and anything. But we recognized that some photographers came out of all those millions and potentially billions of people taking images of life, of nature, but we would only recognize the work of a small number as being great work.
Okay.
That's because technology is not the issue. Again, the human being is the eye, the heart, the spirit, soul.
Okay.
Few people have that level of creativity. Everybody has creativity, but few people have that level of creativity. And it needs to be someone who can speak universally with the same material,
Okay.
as anybody else might have access to, but that person is doing something with it that not everybody else is doing, and not impacting the entire population of human beings.
Okay.
So that makes it rare. Philosophers, especially Western philosophers, have understood this for a very long time. I taught aesthetics.
Okay.
In addition to, everything else in art. I call it the why of art rather than just the what and the how. The why is more important, and your question is a why question, which I think is a very important one.
Thank you very much. Through my search process, I'm sorry for my English, by the way.
Your English is fine. Don't worry.
In my
I
country, we
understand
don't
you.
have to speak English every day with anybody. So
Of course.
okay.
And I never speak your language, so
No problem. Thank you very much.
Alhamdulillah or something.
Inshallah. I want to thank you I noticed that some artists attempt to make a mix between the digital methods and the tradition, like John Ishwood, for example. He make these blocks by traditional method and scanning them with the scanner. And put the details and the texture on the computer. And on the other way, maybe I saw some artists like Dan Collins, but using only the scanner to represent motion. By the way, all of you try to represent motion in your artworks in a way or another. So I wanted to ask you why this experiences. Where is the role of the artist in this technology by using in the different way, maybe putting his touch or using this just the machine?
Well, of course, every artist functions differently and has different concerns. But I would say that the group of us that you're referring to, we share some concerns because we are not just people in love with technology. We are artists in love with technology. So we come from the art world first. And the art world has its own history and its own evolution. Of course, it's a very old history. But a lot happened in the 20th century, especially in Western European art, which then affected everybody else. So there's a history of abstraction, of modernism, and then postmodernism, Dada, surrealism. There was all of these new isms in the 20th century that we were part of. I mean, we are really children of the late 20th century who were the first people ready to go into the 21st century.
Okay.
So we were responding, first of all, to questions of art itself first, and using a new technology, because this new technology was also changing the world that we live in.
Of course.
So, and it was changing us, and it was changing us in ways that we recognized would change more people later. So we were a little ahead of the game. So the responses that you see, I think, come out of that. And I think that's also very common for artists throughout history, to be a little ahead of their time.
Okay.
Because they have access to certain things before everybody else. They experiment and they experience.
Okay.
And then they have that shared universal human humanity that they want to pass forward in their art. And I would say that that's true of everybody that you've mentioned.
Let's back to your work. Can you please talk again about your artwork, Paradise Birds Burlesque?
Paradise Bird Burlesque.
Sorry for my speak.
It's fine. It's one of my most successful pieces. It's also one that I happen to have a great deal of personal affection for. I would say right up front that I did not set out to make a sculpture that looked precisely like that. I was playing in preparation for this big exhibition in China that was going to be sponsored by Autodesk,
Okay.
which happened in 2008 to 2009. It was called the Digital Stone Exhibition and traveled to 4 major venues in China. And so I was also conscious of Eastern, Western influences, but I'm also biology and movement, as you were referring to, have been a theme that's very consistent in my work. So I was playing within all of those themes, and suddenly something became apparent to me on the screen, that it was like, artists often refer to these as happy accidents. And then you say, okay, well, that part's a happy accident, and then you start to edit and change and fix. but I ended up with this thing, which I thought, oh, this is very beautiful. And not all artists in the 21st century are looking to make beautiful work. And I would say that I'm not adverse to making beautiful work. I hope most of my work is beautiful, but it does have other higher ideals that I'm also striving for.
Okay.
But I looked at this piece and it sort of resonated almost like a classic in my eyes immediately. And I saw a bird flower. Now, this is how I came with the title, because there is a tropical bird and a tropical flower that are both called bird of paradise. I don't know why a plant is called bird of paradise, but I know that they exist. And I'm looking at this thing, and it's like, it looked like a bird doing a sort of sexy dance, like a peacock when he spreads his flowers. Now, birds of peacock, in fact, birds of paradise, in fact, do a similar kind of much more exotic, because a burlesque is a sexy dance, and
Okay.
and so that also humanizes it, and it also it makes the sex more than just procreation. It makes the sex sexy. So there was a kind of a sexiness to this thing, and a type of beauty, and a fusion of animal life forms, plant forms.
Okay.
So that's where the title evolved, and I'm very pleased with the piece to this day.
It is really great. What software did you use in this piece, specific piece? What technology did you use?
I was using software that I've been using for decades now. People keep telling me, you should try this, you should try. Why should I learn a new piece of software? I've been using this stuff for 20, 30 years, and they keep improving it. So,
okay.
And it cost me. And so I don't need a learning curve. But going back to your question, because this is part of the reason why Autodesk sponsored us, is that I was a user of 3D Studio from its original beta DOS version that came out in like 1989. That it was also the first professional level animation and 3D modeling program that was available on personal computers. So most of my competition at the time, which would have been Kenneth Snelson and Bruce Beasley, they were obviously working a few years ahead of me, but they had access to Silicon Graphics computers. Now, Silicon Graphics computers don't exist anymore, but they used to be the real powerhouses of 3D modeling and animation, until they just got overwhelmed by the platform that I was working on, which was just simply PCs. And that's the world that we live in today. Now, those computers that they had, when they first started using, they were $250,000 computers. And sometimes the software itself could be many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I was working on a system that was a $3,000 computer using $3,000 software, although I have to be honest, we never paid for software. We were cyber pirates. So we stole everything. If somebody didn't give it to us, we stole it.
Okay. Yeah, we do. Okay.
And they know that. And they actually, the programmers and the companies will joke with us now, because they know that we helped them build a very large user base. And the more that people stole any particular software, the more successful that software became.
Good point.
That's
good point.
That's one of the realities of the electronic revolution.
Okay. So you are saying that as an artist, you can use any of these softwares, the architectures one and the digital clay one, ZBrush maybe, or you can use it all as an artist and make a good piece of art.
Of course, and usually I am using more than one software package. I'm always using 3D Studio Max. I'm always using Rhino. I'm usually also including some low-cost software that's made for fixing files, because when you're going to go print, they have to be watertight, so you have to clean up. And there's a lot of different companies now that that have that kind of software out there. Mesh Mixer is one that I use. I've used NetFab. There's a lot of these. But I use, and certainly I was very interested in virtual clay. So I have used Autodesk Mudbox. I tried out, what's their big competitor? ZBrush. But again, it requires too much of a learning curve that I just stick these days with things that come easy and naturally. I'm not quite the cyber pirate I used to be. I'm really more of a biohacker these days.
Okay. Can you talk briefly, please, about printing bio organs with Dr. Salah?
Yes. Well, since I was designing in the computer, and I was using manufacturing techniques like 3D printing. I started using 3D printing 25 years ago. You know, everybody thinks it's something that came out of the woodwork in the last 5 to 10 years or so, and I was using it almost 2 decades before everybody else.
Okay.
So it prepared me for things that I was not expecting. I didn't know that medical doctors would use these, you know, just like as an artist, I'm taking architectural and engineering packages and using them for art. Well, medical doctors, same thing for medicine. But I'm looking at this and it kind of reminded me of like the oldest tale in the history of art, which is Pygmalion, the Greek sculptor who.
Can you see me, Mr. Robert?
Sure.
I'm really sorry. Can we?
That's the problem. So the power went off in your city?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we still recording?
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah, we are. We was talking about the printing the bio organs.
Okay, so back to bioprinting. And I was starting to tell the story of Pygmalion, a Greek sculptor during the classical Greek period had built this beautiful nude female sculpture, and he was absolutely fallen in love with her and was praying to the gods, you know, to bring her to life. You know, he just was so in love with her. So the god said, okay, but then you work for us and you make us and he became the maker for the gods. But they gave Pygmalion life, and so this beautiful woman comes to life. So I think that sculptors have always had that in them, that, you know, when I look at a Michelangelo figurative sculpture or a Bernini, I get the feeling like they're trying to bring that marble to real life.
Yeah.
So it seemed obvious to me as a sculptor that this is one of the old themes of art, even from the cave paintings. How do we bring the natural world into our world, or bring us into this abstracted world of nature that we create? So when I saw this video, it was a TED.com lecture where Dr. Anthony Atala was showing how they were using 3D printing to print organs, and you could use your own cells so that you could just replace your own parts. You didn't have to wait for a pig to die or another person or somebody, right? You could just simply take, grow your own new part again from whatever good cells you had left.
Okay.
It seemed like, well, this is even a bigger idea. Of course, I thought that's pretty amazing for the future for all of our medical futures. But I was also paying attention to men wanting to go to Mars, which seems to be a lot of effort going towards that. And that astronauts were just simply going to be guinea pigs for what seems to be a suicide mission for the most part.
Of course.
So I started thinking about how, human beings die on a planet, and then somehow their genetic material is going to come in contact with alien DNA. Who knows? I'm not a sci-fi writer, but I think that there's some potential hazards there. So I came up with this idea that I could print little organisms that were made of human cells, and the idea has always been that it would be my own. Like I want to be my own clay, and I built an exoskeleton that out of a harder material that was translucent, so we could see these things in there, but they could be put in zero-G aquariums, which is how we transport fish up to space for experimentation. So this is a lot of technology that's already out there. Just like I had the idea, okay, this technology, that technology, but also then the idea that these could be piggybacked on a Martian rover, and that eventually these things could be driven around all over Mars. And first of all, we can see how much radiation between here and Mars. It's a 2-year journey. It's like 200 times more radiation than most human beings see in a lifetime, and they're going to get it in 2 years. Then they're going to land on a planet that also has a very limited atmosphere, so they're still getting more radiation. So the impact of radiation is a number one. Zero-G, is another one, but my creatures were not going to have endoskeletons, so they weren't going to get some bone disease or anything. I wasn't worried about that. That they were actually designed to be zero-G creatures.
Okay.
But they could then be introduced if we find some viable DNA on Mars or microorganisms, then these things could be confronted with them. We could see what happens between the two of them before we send people there. We could be prepared for whatever could or couldn't happen. So that was a very solid scientific idea behind my proposal. But for me, it was always just about making the first human meat sculpture. I mean,
that's a good thinking, I have to say.
And since then, a lot of people have saying, well, that's also a good idea just for testing things on this planet. I mean, we destroy rabbits for the cosmetics industry all the time. We destroy lots of creatures for testing lots of hazardous materials. Like we could do it to these, to these little miniature, what I call human oysters, or human Precambrian oysters. So, there seems to be a lot of good ideas to keep moving forward. So then I moved into the idea of how do you take this massively expensive bioprinter, which the one I was working on with Dr. Anthony Natala was $750,000. And it took the scientists who built it to run the thing. I mean, that's like, I'm not going to get much work done this way. If I want to keep experimenting in bio art, I need a low cost machine, or at least relatively low cost. So we got a grant, and I became friends, and I'm still working with Alexander Vasilyev, who, after I retired from NYT, he quit a year later, and now he's out here in California. We're working on projects together that have to do with bioengineering, biorobotics, sustainability. I mean, working on ideas of how we save the planet. How do we keep our species going? in the face of all this global warming and climate collapse, everything else. But we were successful in building a 3D bioprinter with a Haddington robot, which is a company that we work with on a lot of projects.
Okay.
And it's a surgically precise robotic arm that we can use motion capture to train it to do anything that any experts can do. And we were successful in building a 10,000. So we took what was a $750,000 technology and shrank it down to a $10,000 technology. But I think, as I told you, it's our intention to eventually get these things to be as ubiquitous and as cheap as cell phones.
Okay.
So anybody and everybody in the world can potentially be a biohacker.
I have to say, you have the spirit of an artist, Mr. Robert, seeking to make this world safe and better. That's it for me. If you want to add anything, I want to really want to thank you again for doing this interview for the second time. I hope I can meet you in person to thank you, because you are a great artist and a great man. After talking with you, you are a very a good person. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you again, and I really appreciate it. This is where it enriches my my research with important information.
And I look forward to see it all, and I hope we can. I hope we can share this video with the world, because I think there's some very nice things in this video.
It would be my honor. I would be honored to share this video, of course, on the social media. Thank you again, Mr. Robert, and I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.
Cheers.
Goodbye.